Who is Dr. Zoltan Dienes?
He's a world-renowned mathematician. He's taught math in dozens of countries, in Europe, Africa, Australia, across the U.S. and Canada. He's published textbooks, teaching materials, a children's book, and now an autobiography.
I've seen his sort of professional credentials. It's about a telephone book-sized piece of material. Did he tell you what actually captured his imagination in math many, many years ago?
He did. And for him, math is about possibilities. He sees it as endless. There are no limits to math, only limits to the way we think about it. But the beauty of it for him, Don, is that math is absolutely logical. One thing builds precisely upon the other.
Mathematics is a kind of structure. It has an architecture, and things fit together in certain precise ways, sometimes unexpected ways. And some of it we describe as symmetry, and some of it we describe as turning. So these cycles and these symmetries, they fit together in certain ways and make bigger buildings. And then these buildings fit together with other buildings. And it gets more and more fascinating the higher up you get in this architectural construction.
So if you go with that analogy of math as architecture, Don, Dr. Dienes sees the Sistine Chapel. I'm afraid I would see something more like a birdhouse.
Which might have the little box you made for your mom in physical arts. Most of us don't share Dr. Dienes' real passion for math. Does he understand or have ideas about why you and I don't see it the way he does?
Oh, he has very definite ideas about it. And he says that we don't like math because we don't know math. He says what we're taught in school is numbers and a set of seemingly arbitrary rules. We're given the tools and lumber, if you will, but not the blueprint.
And what is called maths in school is not really what mathematicians would call maths. It's merely a lot of tricks, which most of them don't even understand how or why they work. They just have to do them because it's in the book. And there's no rhyme or reason about it.
And so how does that affect their view of math?
Well, they just regard it as nonsense. And nonsense is naturally rejected by a living human being as useless, which of course it is. The mathematics that you learn at school is totally useless because you can't really apply it except in the cases to which you've learned to apply it.
So, Don, the reason Dr. Dienes thinks that the math we learn is useless is because we can't relate it to the physical world. He used the example of negative integers. He said to me, show me -2 books. Well, of course you can't, because you can't show something that isn't there.
So how would he indicate to us the concept of -2?
Well, he teaches in terms of concrete objects. To do -2, he would give you 5 books and then tell you to take away 2. In that way, you could see what he calls the difference between the moreness and the lessness.
But my recollection is that the new math being taught in school, kids are already being taught to use blocks to see math in the physical world in the beginning.
Well, they are, but only in the lower grades to learn the basics of numbers and groupings. There's a notion that, only children need sort of playthings to help them understand the ideas. Dr. Dienes says that's just not true. Mind you, the physical props that he uses get more complicated as the math gets more complicated, but the principle is the same. And he still uses these physical props himself because he says without them, math just doesn't make sense.
I'm sure you've never seen a 2. If you write a 2, it's not a 2. It's a symbol for a 2, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Like if I write TABLE, I can't have dinner on that table, can I? It's just a symbol for a table. And that's one of the difficulties in learning mathematics, that you're learning about things that don't really exist at all.
So you see, Don, it is a bit of a paradox. All math is abstract, and so it doesn't really exist. But Dr. Dienes says we can understand those abstracts if we relate them to concrete objects.
Obviously, Dr. Dienes is able to grasp what would be mind-boggling kinds of math well beyond what we're talking about. Where does he see his work ending?
It doesn't. Dr. Dienes says he still has an urge to try to do more. He's always trying to push his understanding and our understanding of math. That's his idea of fun. And it doesn't really matter what happens to the end product.
I once wrote a paper on multi-valued logics, where you can have, instead of just true and false, you can have more values, true and false, and a lot of stuff in between as well. Now, okay, I sent this off to the Journal of Symbolic Logic in the United States, and they published it. Well, I don't know if anybody's ever read it. I don't know if it will ever have any application for you and me, but maybe in another 100 years, multi-valued logics will be just the everyday thing for all you know. But maybe not.
Or maybe not. So advanced math is like any set of ideas, and maybe a little bit like the morning radio we do. You create it, you put it out there, and you might never know what kind of impact it has. An artist creates art, a composer writes music, a mathematician does math.
But why does Mr. Dienes think his methods are not widely being used, particularly people like ourselves who have some skepticism about being able to think about it that way?
Well, he says education is a slow vehicle to turn around. He uses the example of Roman numerals. It would have been easier to do away with all those awkward X's and V's and I's and L's in favor of the numerals that we use now. But it took them hundreds of years to do so.
Is he going to continue to try to change people's minds through his mid-80s and into his 90s?
No, he's pretty much done now. He's 87, and he says all of his work is published and available. So it's out there. Now it's a matter of other people reading it and taking action on it.
With all respect to the teachers we had, it would have been nice to run into a guy like him earlier on.
He certainly had a spark.
Thanks, Eileen.
My pleasure.